Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Simply a Breeze. My name is Bree if you are new here, and this morning we are getting some beef bone broth started. Reed and I just recently ordered a half of a cow and it came with some beef bones. With that, we also ordered a whole pig, and now our freezers are just jam-packed full. They're completely disorganized just because now there's just too much in there. So to help out with that situation, we are going to process the bones that we got with the half of a cow. This is one of my favorite ways to make beef bone broth specifically. If you're interested in how I made turkey broth, I can link that video here. But for beef bone broth, I like to roast the bones first, and this really just helps add a really good flavor profile to your broth. This step is not necessary. However, once I did try this step, I did really like it, and it is now my preferred method. So I have a roaster pan here. We're going to see how many bones we can fit into here, and then we'll see if we need to get another baking sheet out. I will also say we went through a new company this year, and we did not get as many bones as we got the last time we ordered a half a cow, which is okay, but something to note for next time is the amount of bones that I got with my half of a cow. If that's something that you're interested in doing, what you get could be a little bit different because everybody does things differently. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull these bones out. And if you look, these bones still have a little bit of meat on them. They've still got some marrow in them, and that's going to be really great for flavor. They also have a little bit of fat on them. So all of this is just going to add to the beautiful flavor of our broth. I think I'm going to get everything in here. We'll grab another baking sheet, and with that, what I'll do is I'll go ahead, I'll take we want as much surface area to be browned as possible. Honestly, that might be freezer burnt. And some exciting news. I don't know if you can see it, but we got a new kitchen sink, and I'm super excited about it. Reed graciously installed this kitchen sink about a week ago at this point, and I love it. I absolutely love it. This was my birthday present. And we got a new faucet to go with it because if you're upgrading the sink, you might as well upgrade the faucet. And so we absolutely love it. And what we need is a roaster pan for all of these bones today. I'm going to cook them low and slow because I have other things that I want to do while they're cooking, and this makes this a hands-off process. So once the bones are done roasting, they will go into the roaster pan, and I'm going to cook them low and slow to get that broth really going. But this sink really made it's so easy to clean the pan, the liner of the roaster pan, and I'm just happy, and I couldn't be happier with my decision more and more. So if this is a consideration, something that you are thinking of doing in your own kitchen, I do highly recommend it. It was a little bit of work on our end. We had to move some of the plumbing underneath the sink, but so just be warned, it may not be an easy process. We did install it ourselves, but I do love this sink. I'm also not going to worry about salting these bones. They are going to go ahead and be salted once they're in the water and just cooking away. We're going to throw some peppercorns in there. I've got onions and carrots that I'm also going to throw into the broth as well. So we'll worry about seasoning them later. I just want to get these in the oven roasting so I can get some coffee and some breakfast in me, and I can have the oven working for me while I'm doing other things. And if you can't tell because of how much I am talking over myself and fumbling words, I really need to eat. But let's get all of this into the oven. I may have to, I didn't think this through. Not shocked. Let me raise up. There we go. So I'm gonna put you on top. Oh, yeah. Perfect. And then we'll put this one on the bottom. And we'll start out with letting these roast for about 30 minutes and we'll see what they look like. We'll rotate the bones and we'll probably let the other side continue to roast. Another thing that I need to do while the bones are either roasting or while they're cooking in the roaster oven, because again, the roaster oven, they're gonna cook low and slow for most of the day, possibly even into tomorrow. We'll see how the bones are looking. I really want some of the tendons and some of the fat and some of the marrow to really come out and just add to the broth and the nutrients. We are gonna go ahead and fill our dishwasher up with our jars. I want to predominantly can my broth in smallmouth jars. I do wash my jars after we empty a jar. We do give them a wash, but just to make sure the jars are as clean as possible, I do go ahead and clean them one more time, and I like them to be freshly washed before I fill them with anything for canning. So I'm gonna go ahead and get a bunch of smallmouth, or I think they're regular mouth, jars into the dishwasher. We're gonna do pints. I also would like a couple of quarts. We'll see how much broth that yields because I didn't get a lot of bones. But that's also the other prep that we're gonna do. That way, once we're ready to go ahead and jar it up, we have clean jars. I'm also going to try and wash more jars than I need because there's nothing like filling up jars and then running out, and then you have to scramble to go find more, wash them, make sure they're clean to continue the process. It's a huge disruption. So wash more than you think you'll need. It's really not going to hurt anything. Those bones are sizzling. Let me show you. I don't know if you can hear it right now, but I'm gonna open the oven and show you, and you'll definitely be able to hear it. All right, let's take a look. It's been almost 30 minutes. We're gonna go ahead and rotate everything. Let them go another 30 minutes or so. So it's been about an hour. Everything's got some really good like browning on it. So everything's got some great browning on it. So what I think we're gonna do is, I don't know if it's all gonna fit in the roaster pan. Like, I think with how many bones we have, it might be on the verge of being just too much. And then we have a second roaster pan. We also have a crock pot. I was going to put the antelope legs into the crock pot. So we'll see what happens. I was gonna definitely try and keep the antelope separate from the beef. How that plays out, I don't know. So let's figure this out. The coloring on these is awesome. It's gonna add very good flavor to our broth. Look at that marrow right there. Here's the first tray. We're just gonna go ahead, plop these bones. Into the water. And this is a 16-quart stock pot. We're gonna get this plugged in. We're gonna turn it to about 200. Make sure, all right, we didn't trip the GFI. This plug-in is really like finicky. Then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add some peppercorns. I'm not measuring, I'm just eyeballing it. This is probably about a 1/4 cup of salt. I don't think I'm gonna add it all. I'm gonna put about half of it in here. We'll see what that does. This guy, maybe, hopefully. Beautiful. Look at that. That's like cartilage and fat right there. And it's starting to fall off the bone, which is fantastic. Let's see, awesome. Those separated up really nicely. I may put this in the roaster oven. Yeah, this is gonna go in the roaster oven. And then the antelope, I may have to stick in the fridge for now. And maybe we'll get it started this evening. Let's take a look. There's one bone. There's a couple more bones. What I'm going to do next is we're going to add a little bit of water. Add a little bit of water to this. We're going to stick these back in the oven. This water is going to help the stuff that's cooked on release, and then we can add it to our broth. When you're doing this, you just need to be careful because you're working with hot liquid. You can burn yourself. Ask me how I know. Okay, we'll get this plugged in as well. I'm also going to add some peppercorns to the crock pot. And some salt. And lastly, we have veggie scraps. So I'm going to grab a couple things of celery. I'm going to throw that in there. Got a couple carrots. Throw a few carrots in there. And then we're going to go do the same thing to the roaster oven. And we're going to turn the slow cooker on high for a little bit, and then we'll come back and we'll turn it onto a low. If you ever find that you are like needing to use up some celery or some onions, so here's an example. These onions are starting to get a little soft on me, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to cut them into like halves or quarters, and I'm going to chuck them into both of these pots, and I will do the same for the antelope. But alternatively, if I wasn't ready to make broth, I could have just frozen them for the next time I wanted to make broth. And then this way it makes sure that you are not wasting any food. I could always compost it, but this way I do still get to use it and benefit from the nutrients that the onions or any of these have. Like this one is sprouting, and so this will be great inside our broth. I'm not worried about the ends, not worried about the peels. The broth will be strained before we finish it on up. So I'll put 2 onions in here. There we go. And we'll put the lid on this, and then let's chop up one more onion and we'll put it into the slow cooker. Let's see if we can finagle this a little bit more. Wondering if I should get some of the smaller bones so I can get it completely submerged. What do you think? Is that what I should do? I think that's what I should do. Shoot. Okay, and that's hot. Good to know. So let's take this bone out. Okay, we'll use the cutting board. There we go. Let's see how many bones we can fit in here now. Grabbed a couple small. I think I can fit one more. We can get it to submerge. Fantastic. I really just wanted to make sure the bones were like completely submerged in the water. Now, set this back. We'll get the lid on this. We'll get the lid on this. And I also need to take this compost out, which is where I'm going next, is to go work in the garden while these slow cook all day. Good morning, everybody. It has already been a super productive morning. The broth smells really, really good. I'm actually gonna wait until about 3 o'clock, and then we're just gonna call it. I'm gonna give it a taste test. It's been going low and slow for well over 24 hours at this point. And so I definitely wanted to give it at least 24 hours simmering. One of the recipes I found for roasting it said ideally do it for 48. I don't have that kind of time. I should have started this on Friday evening, but I didn't. And that's just reality. And that's okay. So we will get the most out of these bones as best as we can. While we let the broth continue to simmer, I need to get these tomatillos from last year's garden out of the freezer. I officially have plants in the ground in our garden, and I should have gotten to these much sooner than we did now. It is officially May, and I still have last year's tomatillos in the freezer, and that's not okay. Also, Reed and I just purchased some bulk meat, and because the tomatillos are in there, it really made finding space for some of that really difficult. So I am trying to make sure I get all of last year's harvest completely out of our freezer. So what we are going to be doing is making a recipe out of the all-new Ball Canning Cookbook. And this recipe is roasted Salsa Verde. And so this recipe only makes 3 pints. I have 18.2 pounds of tomatillos. This is also the reason we're not growing tomatillos this year. I still have Salsa Verde in the basement that we canned last year. from the year prior's garden, and then I still have these tomatillos that need to be processed, so it's high time we just get that done. So I have 18.2 pounds of tomatillos that we need to process, and so based off of this recipe calls for 4 pounds of tomatillos. Knowing I have 18.2, did the math, and that means I need 4.5 recipes of, I need to make a 4.5 times batch of this recipe, essentially. That way I can use up all these tomatillos. So let me fill you in on what this recipe calls for. This recipe calls for 4 pounds of tomatillos, 2 medium-sized white onions, 2 jalapenos, 6 garlic cloves, half a cup of lime juice, a 1/4 cup of cilantro, salt, and pepper. We are going to be using pre-minced garlic that I have on hand. We just need to keep moving on through that. I don't have fresh garlic on hand other than that, and that's fine. We can use that. I did not have enough onions, so we needed to get more onions. I needed to get lime juice, and I needed to get cilantro because I didn't have cilantro on hand. I do have cilantro started in the basement, but it is not near enough for what we are going to need for this recipe, and that's okay. Hopefully after this we will be growing our own cilantro and have enough. The trick here in Colorado is it gets super hot and our cilantro bolts, but we shall see. The other amazing thing about this recipe is a roasted salsa, which I prefer. So when I grew up, we always used to roast our salsa. Even fresh salsa, we would roast it before we would make it. And so I really like the flavor profile of roasted, so that is what we're going to do. We need to get this 18 pounds of tomatillos roasting in the oven. So we need to turn the oven to 425 degrees. We also then need to get the onions, the peppers. This says to add the garlic. Honestly, because my garlic is already minced, we're not going to do the garlic. That'll be the one thing we don't roast. And if we do, I'll add it right before these are done just to give it a little flavor. But because the garlic is already minced, it'll just burn. And we don't want that. So I already have one roaster oven filled with tomatillos. We are going to definitely have to do this in batches. Let's get the oven preheating to 425. That was a strong one. We are also going to need our cooking sheets for this as well. That cooking sheet is on the smaller side, so I would like to wait to use that. All we're going to looks like I have a couple of green tomatoes in here too, and that'll work just fine. We can definitely intermix it, but it won't cause a problem. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and get the cookie sheets in the oven. We're going to do 2 at a time because my oven isn't wide enough to put these in side by side. So we'll just do 2 at a time. And we probably, because these are frozen, we're going to have to periodically dump off some liquid so we don't have a super watery salsa. I almost forgot about the antelope bones that were in our fridge. So we did go ahead and roast these yesterday with the beef bones, and then I stuck them in the fridge because I wanted to keep them separate from the beef bones. But I'm gonna go ahead and put these in the Instant Pot and just kind of see what kind of broth they yield. I do still have some scraps, veggie scraps that I can chuck in here. We'll add some more water, and we're just gonna pressure cook it probably for about 90 minutes in the Instant Pot. And then this broth will be ready to go. And then here in, gosh, what time is it? It is already 12:17 here. So probably here in the next couple of hours, I will have these other broths done, and then I need to start straining them off. So I think that's the play. Do I let this sit? This is going to take about 90 minutes, and then I'm going to have to strain it. Yes. We're going to get this going now. Let me add some water, and then we'll add our veggie scraps to it. We also want to add a splash of apple cider vinegar, and that will help us just extract some of the nutrients from these bones. And it'll help break down the cartilage and the fats. some celery. And then we've got some carrot. There's more celery. Let's grab some carrot and onion scraps. Okay, we're gonna set this. I don't want it to keep warm. I want it to cool down. That's gonna go for an hour and a half. So now that we've got all of our broths going, let's check on our tomatillos. They've been in here for a little while. The oven was having to, I put the tomatillos in the oven before it came to temperature, and then because the tomatillos were frozen, I think it was preventing the oven from fully reaching temperature. So I took them out, it rose to temperature, and then I put them back in. They are not quite roasted, they are still thawing because they are frozen. So the cooking process is gonna take a little bit, but we do need to strain off some of the water because we don't want this to overflow. Looks like they are starting to roast just a little bit, but we're gonna strain off some of this liquid. Woohoo! One of the trays of tomatillos is done. I'm gonna call it done anyways. It's definitely got some good char to it. Can you see that beautiful char? I'll bring you in once I... There we go. Bring that up. We'll put this one in. There, we'll drain some of that liquid. There we go. Perfect. Look at how beautifully roasted those are. That's gonna give this some great flavor. Now all I'm gonna do is transfer it into that bowl right there. We are actually going to call it done. I may have strained out too much liquid, but that's fine. Beautiful. And I think that second batch of tomatillos is definitely going to roast a little bit faster. So I'm going to go ahead and get out some jalapenos. These are also from last year. They've already been de-seeded and I've cut the stems off. And we need, how many of those do we need? I wrote it down. We need 9 of these jalapenos. And then if we need any more heat, I'll give this a taste test before we finish the recipe. And if we need more heat, I can always add cayenne powder. I can add chili powder. I also have a green chili powder that we made. So I can always add spice through seasonings. Seasonings don't throw off the canning recipe, but I don't want to add too many like jalapenos to like throw off the ratios and stuff. These are pretty small, so I feel pretty confident, but just to be on the safe side. And we got to get this other tray in. Fantastic. All right, the tomatillos in the oven are almost done. So what I want to do is I'm going to get these onions chopped up real quick. And then we can pop the jalapenos and the onions into the oven. And it called for, again, 9 medium. No. Hang on. I need 9 medium white onions chopped into 8 wedges. Honestly, it doesn't matter too particularly much, but. Honestly, I should be saving these because I have chicken broth that I'm going to make in the coming weeks. So the rest of these I will save. I won't do this. So that means we will put them in the bag of ice wraps we already have. So that was 9 onions. Oh, that's a little burnt. That's okay. It'll be fine. We're going to pop those in there. We're going to take these out. We're going to put these in. And those won't take nearly as long as the tomatillos have taken. I'm also because I want to release some of the stuff that's on the bottom of the pan, and it'll add to the flavor of the salsa. Ooh. 18 pounds of tomatillos now all fits in one bowl. Ooh, those onions and those peppers already smell amazing. Oh, good thing there's a tray underneath. And then we've got our garlic. And so this, it says substitute half a teaspoon for 1 clove. And with my math, we need 27 cloves of garlic. So now I need to figure out how many teaspoons and or cups I need to convert this to. Okay, I did the math, and the solution is 4.5 tablespoons of cloves of garlic, of our minced garlic. Oh my goodness, we need 4.5 tablespoons of our minced garlic. If you did not know, 4 tablespoons equals 1/4 cup. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to scoop 4 tablespoons. 4.5. There we go. Perfect. On here is when I 4.5 times the recipe that we're following. I need 2.25 cups of lime juice. So I know for a fact that this is 16 ounces, so we're going to do 1 whole one of these. Maybe. How about before I go any further, I read the directions? Okay. We don't add the lime juice yet, so I'm glad I looked. Okay, we are gonna call it. My kitchen is so dang hot and I can't stand it, and I'm ready for this oven to be off. There we go. One. There we go. Yeah, they're good. And they're nice and cooked, which is even better. So. I'm gonna go ahead and scoop. All of this. The Vitamix. Perfect. Hopefully, we got it all nice and blended. Perfect. So we're just under 16 cups. Let's grab the spatula. Make sure we get all of this goodness out. Yeah, this plate is acting, it's just... We need to get this simmering. In case you weren't aware, if you're new to canning, it's a labor of love. This is a whole process. And I still have dishes that I still need to clean up. However, it's worth your effort. And you are rewarded with the convenience later. Okay, let's see. Let's check the recipe now. Okay, process. Transfer to a pot. Stir in the lime juice and the remaining ingredients. Okay, so now we need to add the cilantro, the salt, and the pepper, and the rest of the lime juice. And I have gone ahead and added 2 cups of lime juice, so I just need another 1/4 cup. We'll just say that's about what I need. Nine teaspoons of salt. And this is a 1/2 teaspoon. There's 1, 2, 2.5, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 4.5 teaspoons of black pepper, which I'll have just barely enough. 1, 2, 3, It says just bring this to a simmer and then we can get this canning. Let's give this a taste test really quickly. It smells good. Let's see. It does have heat. I think I want to add a little more cumin though. Or there isn't any cumin. I want to add cumin. It's not overpowering. So let's go ahead. We'll add, this is a 1/4 teaspoon. Let's say 2 teaspoons of cumin. I was doing heaping scoops if any of you were counting. I turned the stove back on so we can let this simmer a little bit more and let those flavors infuse. Yeah, that's perfect. I'm excited about this. If you've never had salsa verde, it's delicious. And those homegrown jalapenos, you saw how tiny they were? Fabulous. Absolutely phenomenal. Now we're just gonna ladle. Now what we do is, so this is a fancy little tool, and then on each of these it tells you in inches of headspace, and so we've got a 1/4 inch, or 1 inch, 3/4 inch, 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch of headspace. This needs to be at a 1/2 inch of headspace. I'm going to top all of these off as full as I can get them, and then we'll leave this one out so Reed can give it a taste test when he gets home. And then one of the last things that you do, this is more prevalent when you're like about to work with broth, this will be incredibly important, but either take a clean cloth, I'm just going to use a paper towel, and I'm going to wipe all the rims with vinegar. This just kills and helps with the grease, breaks that down, and really makes sure that the rim of the jar is clean. So that way the lid can make a good seal. Now we've got clean lids. Then we're going to make sure that this lid is center, and we're only going to screw this on fingertip tight. We have the canners now sitting on our outside stove. I have them on about a medium-low heat just because the burners burn so hot, and my All-American pressure canner is aluminum, and if it gets too hot it does run the risk of cracking. Granted, yes, it is a pressure canner, but these outdoor camp stoves do burn hotter, so that is something that needs to be considered when using the outdoor camp stove. But now I just need to wait for the water to come to a rolling boil. I also made sure to have at least an inch of water on top of the jars, and I had to use both canners because I was going to end up 2 jars shy of being able, or 3 jars shy of being able to fit into just the one water bath canner. So that's why I'm using my pressure canner as a water bath canner. So with that, once these are up to a rolling boil, the processing time can start, and I believe they're going to process for about 20 minutes, but let's go double check. They process for 20 minutes, plus another 10 for altitude. Let me double check. I wrote this down. Adjusting for altitude, boiling water. We add another 10 minutes. So they're going to process for 30 minutes. So while those are getting up to temperature, I may tackle some dishes. I'm going to keep an eye on it. The great thing about where my sink is I can look out the window and keep an eye on the flames. All right, so what I have here in the sink is a bowl and a strainer. And this is mostly so I can go ahead and get all of the veggie scraps out of here, and I can just have mostly broth left over. And then, as I'm ladling into the jars, I will put this tiny little fine mesh sieve on top of our funnel, and that'll catch any smaller bits, and that'll ensure we have a clean, pure broth for us to can later. But in order for us to get to that point, we need to strain this broth. And so I've got my spider, and really this is so I can go ahead and I can dish out the chunks of veggies, the chunks of fat and chunks of cartilage. And the reason I'm putting it in the strainer instead of just chucking it in the trash is because there's still going to be some broth that drips off of this. And I want to catch any of that broth that is still dripping. I don't think there's any marrow to be taken out of this bone. We're going to use this as a catch. Perfect. Look at this bone right here. This bone definitely still has marrow in it. I don't want any of the... Let's get some of the vegetables out. The trick is to very carefully combine these two. Oh, goodness. Okay. Go, Boots. Go. Woohoo! And now we're going to let this cool a little bit. I want the fat to all rise There is a decent layer of fat on here, so what we're gonna do is we are just gonna let this cool. I have a fat separator, and we are going to go ahead, I'm gonna skim some of this off myself. We're gonna stick that in a jar. We'll use it as we cook and everything. We just don't want too much fat in our broth. It's okay if it has a little bit of fat, but the last time I canned beef broth, I left all the fat in, and I ended up with like almost half an inch of fat on the top, which can be really good, but when I had an upset stomach, I didn't need a super greasy broth. So that's the reason I am skimming it this time. Previously I wouldn't have, but now that I've had that experience, now I know. So I'm sharing that with you. Hopefully, if you want to keep the fat on, you totally can, because I totally did. Canning recipes say don't. Try to skim some of it off. So use discretion, make the choice that's best for you. We also now need to repeat this exact same process with the antelope. Antelope isn't, wild game in general isn't like very fatty. It does smell gamey though. We're gonna let that cool, to be determined. It almost smells like dirty dishwater. It's okay. I'll have Reed taste it. If he's not a fan, I won't put in the effort. It's not great. I probably will not do this again. This is by far my favorite salsa verde recipe to date. I made salsa verde last year, however, it was not as good. I also forgot to show you me debubbling the salsa verde. So there is a debubble that you take the other end of that measuring tool, you stick it in, and you I forgot to show you that, but I did do that. But I've already heard some pops. I'm going to be making this salsa verde recipe again going forward. 10 out of 10 recommend. And I don't know if it's because of the jalapenos that I used, but it's got like the perfect slow burn. So now that the salsa verde is out of the canner, we can now get our broth going. I did skim off probably the equivalent of almost 3 cups of fat. So there was a lot of fat sitting on top of the broth. Any other fat that's remaining within the broth, I'm not super worried about. It will be totally fine. So now all I'm doing is turning over all of my jars. While I waited, I had them turned upside down so that way nothing got in them, to make sure the inside stays very clean. And I have more sitting on our dining room table, also facing upside down, if I need more. Good news is I can now handle this. Let me feed Boots real quick because this is going to take me longer and he wants to eat. And now the name of the game is, we have our funnel. We're going to put our strainer on top. We're just going to feed directly into that strainer. that fat layer already looks so much better. And I believe broth is 1/2 inch of headspace. And there's a lot of dripping happening from the bottom of this scoop. And that is part of the reason we clean the rims of the jars before we put lids on.
So I always forget how greasy this process is, but it is still 100% worth it in my mind to have all of this shelf stable and not taking up space in my freezer. Part of the reason we have so much fat is because there was cartilage, there was bone marrow, there was also fat on the bones still, and the bones were just holding on to some fattiness. And so we are going to use that fat in other cooking applications. I just didn't want it on our broth on this day. And you'll see here in a little bit, I did discover that there was still too much fat in the jars, and so I have to use my fat separator to help dwindle that down yet again.
If you can't tell, there's a lot of fat still on top of these jars. I'm gonna see if I can use my ice cream scoop to scoop some of it out. Originally I was thinking maybe I just like hold off until tomorrow and I will scoop cold fat out of my jars, but I don't think I want to do that. So instead, homemade beef broth is a greasy business. All I'm doing right now is I'm going to go ahead and wipe down the rims real quick with the excess grease. I'm still going to go through with a paper towel with vinegar on it because of all the fat. But we're just going to use a towel to get the excess off because there was a lot. And then once these jars come out of the canner and they have cooled, and I guarantee that and I have verified that all of the seals have been made and I can take the bands off, then I will clean the jars thoroughly before I put them on the shelf for storage. And then this one that's barely empty, I will probably drink that at some point this week, or it will go into a dinner. I'm actually going to use a dishcloth. I'm going to go through enough paper towels today as it is. Oh, I don't need to do that one. And both the towel that I just wiped these down with and this are clean. They haven't been used today. They're freshly laundered.
I originally wanted to can these pints outside, however the wind picked up and I had to move everything inside. And so I went ahead and processed all of these pints for 20 minutes, and then the following day I processed the quarts for 25 minutes, both at 15 pounds of pressure because of my elevation. But making broth is super easy. It is just a labor of love. If this is something that you are interested in doing, I do want to encourage you to give it a try and just go for it, because it is incredibly rewarding, and I love having the convenience of broth already made, shelf stable, and on hand. So I hope you enjoyed this video and you found it helpful and encouraging. I would love to know what your favorite thing to can is, because I'm always open to new ideas. I wanted to thank you for being here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you all the next time we are in the kitchen or in the garden. Have a great rest of your night. Bye.